It's a deal, right? Ride with me if you ride with me. You can slide with me if you feel like 550 on the 5 sticky. Come get high with me. That's a deal, right? That's a deal, right?
So they want me down and out. Ay, we ain't going out like that. We ain't going out like that. Watch me go and bounce right back. Down for the count, but the hound strike back.
And we're back with another episode of Whole Brother Live. I am Dr. Maliek Blade, and I'm glad to be back with you. I know it's been a while. I had to work through some technical difficulties, as you might have seen on our last live. A lot of things to work through. But thank you for tuning in and for asking questions and for seeing what's up, making sure everything was good. But we're back with another episode, and man, there is, I wouldn't even say a lot going on because it's all centered around one story or one person, but there's a lot to unpack, I would say, as it relates to this Shannon Sharpe stuff. So we're going to definitely touch on that, as well as a story that should be kind of a mainstream story, but I think due to Kanye's antics, his story didn't get a lot of attention, but it definitely deserves some attention, and there's a lot there to discuss as well. So I'm going to zoom in on that and kind of show you, maybe educate for those that don't even know about that story or that situation. But those will be the main topics for today. Shannon Sharpe and him being accused of rape and other things by this um, OnlyFans performer. And then also later I'll get to Kanye West made a song and spoke about uh, incest that he had with a male cousin and how it lasted until him being 14 years of age, and there's so much that goes with that. And again, for those that don't know, I typically take stories that are going on in the media and then look at how this applies to people's lives, how the situation can be a recurring situation that we can deal with better. So it's not about necessarily exposing people or talking about the people at hand, but it's letting their experiences open up a conversation that is relevant for people as a whole and how we can move forward in a better way or learn from it, so to speak. So I'm going to deal with this Shannon Sharpe situation first, but I want to say up front, I am going to cover this topic from a lot of different angles, and I'm going to deal with it from these different angles in no particular order of priority. In fact, I'm dealing with one particular angle first, and I know that when I get to it, you're probably going to be like, this is coming from left field. Who, why, how did you get from Shannon Sharpe and the accusations against him and the woman to what you're talking about? And I'm going to make that evidently clear up front. You might be caught off guard at where I go with this Shannon Sharpe discussion first. I'm going to bring it around to the accusations and rape and sexual discipline and a lot of other things that have already been discussed. But I'm first going to deal with something that I have not seen anybody discuss yet. And I think it needs to be discussed again, not to zoom in on the people that I'm bringing up, but to have a much broader conversation about if what I'm saying is going on, how we can better deal with that if that is your personal situation as a listener or if you know someone who's going through that type of situation. So, enough stalling, and it wasn't a stall, it was just a caveat. Uh, for those that don't know, Shannon Sharpe's on ESPN, has popular Club Shay Shay and the Nightcap podcast with Ocho Cinco. I would say over the past 5 years, he is probably been his uh, spike in terms of popularity and entertainment outside of professional sports. He's a retired athlete. And yeah, top of last year, 2024, his podcast, Club Shay Shay, he had an episode with Cat Williams, and it was like, it went super viral, in part because Cat was going at so many people. So he reinvigorated Shannon's podcast. And from there, I would say Shannon had a series of guests that attempted to try to capture lightning in a bottle again, and a lot of them went on the show, particular in particular comedians went on the show and tried to do what Kat did, tried to create drama, tried to talk about people and go viral. In my personal opinion, the show definitely fell off from that point forward because there ended up just being aimless conversations, uh, shock value, drama, and I don't think Shannon had the skill set to then bring something impactful out of those conversations. So I definitely think, he recognized that getting eyes on your show turns into money, and it seems that that became the main focus. What can I do? Who can I talk to on here to keep episodes coming out, to get some attention on the show, to get some money? And the substance of the show died, in my personal opinion. So Shannon has blown up and gotten a lot of attention on him again because of those shows, ESPN, Club Shay Shay, The Nightcap. Uh, I was Shannon Sharpe for Halloween last year because he went viral for just getting out of a truck because of his posture and his sweatsuit and his man bag. And that was a thing. You know, people kept paying attention to this man, even over the most minute details, right? What he wore. Uh, then Shannon Sharpe got a lot of attention for accidentally going live on Instagram while he was supposedly having sex with a woman named Michelle. So we could overhear it, but it was an accident. We didn't see anything. We just heard a lot. He apologized for it and then released some merch related to it. And then I would say the most recent big story after that is now this. He's being accused in I believe, a civil suit by this woman of rape. He tried to do something that she didn't want to do, but he was paying this OnlyFans girl who I believe was 19 at the time they started dealing with each other, but it's been a few years, so she's in her 20s now. Shannon Sharpe is in his mid to late 50s, I believe. And that is kind of the drama. This people have opinions about an older man dealing with such a younger woman and an age gap, and people are some men are comparing Shannon Sharpe's situation to Tracee Ellis Ross, who on Michelle Obama's podcast last week, it was going viral for Tracee Ellis Ross saying that she dates younger men because older men her age tend to be very controlling and treat her like a possession. So she dates younger men, I guess, due to them being more open minded and not having that kind of controlling mentality. So while Shannon's going viral in a negative way for the girl being white, the girl being young, what the girl has accused him of, there's also at the same time a conversation about, mostly from men, saying, why can't Shannon Sharpe date younger without you slandering him? You're talking down on him for dating younger, but you applauded Tracee Ellis Ross for dating younger. Like, where's the disconnect? Why is it okay for women, but it's not okay for men? That's what's being raised. I'm going to come around to all of that. But first, I want to deal with this from a very unique angle that you probably have not heard about before. And before I get to the unique angle in terms of Shannon Sharpe, I want to bring up Jalen Green. Jalen Green is a NBA player, believe 23 years old, and he had a baby last year, maybe the year before that, with Drea Michelle. Drea Michelle is 40. At the time, probably would have been 39, 38, but she's 40 now, I believe. So there's an age gap there, right? And her son, she has a son that's a lot closer to Jalen's age. The interesting thing that I want to bring up that happened with Jalen is before it came out that Drea was pregnant by. Oh, let me also say, Drea supposedly, I can't confirm, but this is what they say, had surgery on her body. But she is one of the people that had a surgery where you can't tell, and it looks very natural. Drea is heralded as being very attractive. A lot of men want her. I would say she's pretty, but mentality, definitely a no for me. but she looks attractive, right? And this is this because there's context for this. I'm saying that for a reason. Dre is attractive, and but she's she's older by some standards. A lot of men want her, so I think if you bring up her name amongst a lot of men, she's known, right? She's known for being attractive to men, and she's known for saying not so smart things on social media. And like one of the things she's viral for is saying, "I believe my wholeness can be deleted." So that's Drea. So before it came out that Drea was pregnant by Jalen Green was going viral. He was getting a lot of attention on him, and there were accusations against him for being gay. There were videos circulating, at least two, if not more. There were videos circulating of Jalen, I believe in college, playing around with roommates. There were typically two, three, four, five, if not more, guys in a dorm room in some of these videos. And in some of them, Jalen is humping another guy in like a missionary position. Everyone's fully clothed, but they're clearly playing around. Some might laugh at it. Some might be like, "Oh no, that's gay. Can't do that." Whatever your perspective is on it, I'm just recapping the information. So it was a lot of the guys in the room were watching. They were laughing. It was clear. It clearly didn't look like someone getting caught in the act in the privacy of their home. It clearly looked more like just horseplay, people being silly. And some would be able to laugh that off and say clearly they're not actually romantically interested in each other. They were just horse playing around. Probably was a bet that someone lost or whatever the case may be. Others are very serious about gay games and would be like, "I don't want my son a part of that. Part of that. I don't want to be a part of that." Some guys are very rigid, and that can't be funny. It's just super serious about that topic. Wherever you landed on it is where you land on it. So Jalen, right before all of this, for several months, was getting gay allegations because there wasn't just one video. We ended up seeing another one, and it was like, okay, this seems to be a pattern. Fast forward, the same thing has been happening for a few years with Shannon. Shannon, I don't know if it's his cousin or something, but there was some man who I guess was a stylist who's visibly kind of feminine, I guess a known gay guy, who was for years seen walking around with Shannon. And I guess there was some type of relationship there, whether it's his cousin or his stylist or something. But people saw them together. They've been pictured together at games and other places a lot, and people started using that to say that Shannon was gay. Shannon being called gay came up on his podcast, and he's addressed that. There's just been rumors circulating, and I'm not sure where the origin of some of them came from. That was something that was actively being discussed online. There was Shannon's gay, and there was Shannon likes white women. Those things came up, and that came up when he went viral for getting out of the truck at Total Wines. People say his sweatsuits are too tight. Some say the posture is the giveaway. Those things have come up. And even when the video came out, or the audio, when Shannon accidentally went on live and was having sex, I did a video about this, but someone even posted on Twitter talking about how horrible it is that Shannon had to stage that accidental live for us to overhear him having sex with a woman just to prove his straightness. They were pretty much saying that they believe that Shannon orchestrated that on purpose because he knew about the rumors, it was getting to him, and he did it to cover for himself. I'm bringing up Jalen and Shannon and all of this to say that there does exist a battle that a lot of men face for credibility. Specifically, I have to say this is amongst, I would say more so straight men and straight women. This shouldn't be the case, but there exists a loss of respect and credibility from both some women and some men if a man is exposed for having previous sexual encounters or has the gay label put on him. That exists, and straight men have to fight that because it makes you lose credibility. So while some might just laugh off rumors like that or think it's no big deal, while some might not care about the opinions of others, even if they are getting those accusations, there are others who I do think fall to the pressure of people. There are people that are deeply invested in being received a certain way, and that can lead to things like this. So, yes, I believe it is possible that Jalen, in response to the accusations, pursued and got Drea pregnant. I would not be shocked if those events were not tied together. Same thing with Shannon Sharpe. I believe it's possible that the live was intentional to kind of clear the air, because in addition to that, Shannon was talking about his sexual escapades on his show quite a bit. Uh, I saw a clip even more recently. Funny Marco was on the show. Funny Marco talked about Shannon Sharpe looking like Miss Netta. And Shannon Sharpe responded by saying something about, you know, regardless of what people say about me, about how I look, if I look like Miss Netta, those checks are still clearing and those young ones are still opening up, referring to young women having sex with him. And then shortly after that went up, this accusation came out from this woman. So I can't confirm these things. I don't know these people. I'm not saying I have any inside sources. I'm saying that I see a pattern, and I'm saying because I know that exists for a lot of men, that that could be the case for Jalen Green and Shannon Sharpe. And all of this is to bring attention to stigma. When some women get upset with a man if he cheats, if he lies, if he hurts their feelings, if he turns them down for sex, some women resort to calling that man gay, even if she's actively involved with him. And that is because they know the power that that has to rob a man of his credibility and respect in society and community. And this is, again, is among straight men. Now, if you're in the gay community, then it's no big deal, because everyone, assuming everyone's out. But this is also why a DL culture exists. There are men that may like men, but because they know they'll be shunned, maybe by their friend group, by women that they may want in the future, or even family members, they have to then hide. That's why DL culture exists. So I'm bringing this up to say that that thing is so strong that people, men in particular, take their same sex attractions to the grave because they know what the impact will be. And I think we need to be aware of this as we have conversations about sexuality. And this part doesn't get talked about enough on why certain straight men are so rigid about certain things, or maybe even overcompensate. Thou doth protest too much. There's something to prove. And I think there's two ways. There's one way where someone actually does have same-sex attractions and is trying to hide it, but there are also others where that's not what's going on, but they got accusations anyway, then they feel the need to overcompensate to prove to you all I'm not gay. So that very well could be active in this situation. And I wanted to bring that to the light for us to be careful in how we speak about people and recognize the potential damage that we may cause. People don't truly understand for straight men what that does. Uh, People might smile and say they're cool with you, but I would say amongst men, there tends to be, for some, a lack of respect that's associated with that. And being real, there's also this thing that comes with the idea of penetration. Many of us have a unwritten rule or idea that we subscribe to in our head that women are supposed to be the only ones that are being penetrated. It's natural. So there also exists this dichotomy that, well, if a man is gay, it's more acceptable to be the penetrator, and it's less acceptable to be the one penetrated. So there's stigma around being the receiver in a gay relationship. And that gets frowned upon even in the gay community. In the LGBTQ community, men will talk down on men who are the receivers in the gay relationship. So there's so many things that exist that is tied to this that may cause someone to act out in a way to clear their name. So that very well could be at play here. And that's a conversation for another day, but I wanted to bring that to your attention if you didn't know. Um, Someone has said before, and I'm not saying I agree with it, but I'm saying I can't deny it either because I've seen it time and time again. Someone pointed out that the worst thing a black man can be in the black community is gay. He can mess with children, be a drug dealer, kill people, and there's always a level of understanding and forgiveness for that. But there's something about being gay or liking men or having a same sex sexual encounter that people shun. So there's something there to be discussed. The second vantage point through which I want to address the Shannon Sharpe situation and the accusations are the fact that the woman is white. Again, bringing it over to something in general, I went to a predominantly white college. There were a few black people there. They were black men. And almost all of the black men at that school were dating or exclusively interested in white women. There were a few black women there that brought. I was working in like diversity and inclusion, and something that came to my office was that the few black women on campus, didn't feel like the black men were even giving them any attention or eyes or even considering them. They felt like they weren't even women because of how they were viewed and treated by black men who they were interested in. All this in context at a white school. Uh, so I'm not anti interracial relationships at all. But what I am anti is something I observed in college and in other instances where black men date white women, and as they discuss why they don't date black women, they start talking about certain stereotypes and tropes. Uh, you've probably heard it expressed that black women are masculine, aggressive, and white women are more feminine and submissive. So whenever I hear that, that ends up being concerning if they're generally casting that net about black women. While that exists for some, obviously it doesn't exist for all. And I do think we get into some funny territory when we just look at the way the world works. Most people, let's just say America, most people are with someone of the same race. White people tend to be with white people, black people tend to be black people, Hispanic people tend to be with Hispanic people. But I do see a lot of us brothers that end up stepping outside of that. And of course you can, but the pretenses through which you do it end up being very concerning. And while some, I would say, people can go to white women for a variety of reasons. But here are some of the reasons that they do it that are of concern and we do need to address. And one is a inferiority complex and a superiority complex. Some really think that white ice is colder or white is right or white is better, or that it's some type of super significant accomplishment to get a white woman as a black man. It's one thing to get a pretty black girl or a pretty beautiful black woman, but it's looked at as something more substantial to get a white woman. And I do think that needs to be dealt with. Some internalized inferiority that sees her as a prize to you solely based on her whiteness. Now, you might meet a woman who has great qualities beyond her skin, and that's one thing. But to make this a little more spicy, something that has come up And again, I'm not making this stuff up. So y'all don't come at me like I'm making up these ideas. These are conversations that folks are having. The concern ends up being that not only do some black men trip over themselves to chase white women, but they go after any white woman that they could have access to with no standards. So in some instances, that's the most mediocre and or unattractive looking white woman. Black men that might have dated a Miss America beauty pageant black woman, when they date white women, they drop all those physical standards for some reason. Again, with the concern being you don't even care about beauty. It's something about that white skin that just makes her exceptional. I don't know all the mentality that goes into it. I'm just telling you this. These are the discussions that happen, and if the choice is solely based off of somehow being uh, convinced that white is better, then we have an issue. And I would say, in the white nationalist and historically racist country that we live in, I know that that's at play and that's of concern. So again, this isn't just coming at brothers for being in interracial relationships, but it's being willing to have the conversation. Do you think that she's superior just because she's white? She's white. Did you lower the bar for her because she's white? Or do you think that it makes white men accept you more if you get a white woman? Do you think it's raising your status, your capital, your value? And I know that some of that is questions that people would ask of Shannon too. Because again, some of the critiques, once people found the pictures of this girl who's an OnlyFans model, it he was offering to settle with her for $10 million and had been paying her lots of money before that. So the question ends up being, what about, some might say, this little white girl made her worth all of this to you? What is that? I'm inviting you all to have the discussion. Uh, but I think that's off-putting to some, and it makes you wonder what's going on. So I'd love to eventually talk to some black men that are in interracial relationships and talk through this and ask certain probing questions. Again, I'm not against interracial relationships. One of my best friends, Will Jackson, is married to Mackenzie Jackson. Will's black, Mackenzie's white, and they have a beautiful baby girl. So it's not about being against it. And in fact, he and I have talked about, like, it's one thing to be in a interracial relationship, but both of us, we don't rock with the guys that are black guys that are trashing black women. Like, that's another thing. Like, what is there's something that those guys have to work through. And it doesn't mean that black women are beyond critique. It means that you can't then rule out dating them because of some of your negative experiences. Because even if it was 6 black women you dated and they were all the stereotype and loud and disrespectful and violent, what is 6 in comparison with all the black women? So we have to recognize that even though we have our experiences and we feel it very real, in a very real way, it still probably pales in comparison with the whole. So we just have to watch what we speak out of our mouths as a result of these experiences and make sure we're not slandering a certain generation, especially as a black man doing it, because indirectly that gives others permission to do so as well. So yeah, there's a concern there, like, what is all this about? As a 50-plus-year-old man pushing 60, you're dropping all this money for this white girl. What is this about? The next angle is the paying for sex angle and giving up on romance. So again, Shannon was paying this woman to have a lot of different types of sexual activities and encounters. And more recently, what they're saying is they were really into BDSM. There was, this is a trend though. This isn't just Shannon. This isn't just men with money. This is a trend amongst your average men too, where men are opting out of getting in romantic relationships and just choosing to pay for sex as an alternative to dating and getting married. I did a video on this after there was a series of tweets I saw with some guys from the I don't know them personally, but they were from like the Washington D.C. area where I'm from. And the guy was basically saying, he tweeted, "My life has been so much more peaceful now that I stopped dating and I just pay for sex when I need it." And then you have all these guys under the tweet agreeing with him, like, "Yes, same thing. I learned this lesson. I had to learn this the hard way, but I'm glad I learned it." Um, yeah, they're opting out of dating and marriage and just paying for sex when they need it. And I addressed this in a video, and here are some of the comments under the video. These are just random YouTubers that chose to volunteer this information. This isn't my story at all, but if it was, I would not be sharing it in a YouTube comment section. But these are some of the comments under me addressing that tweet about uh, it's better to just pay for sex than to date. One person said, "Women don't want me. That's why I'd rather pay for it. I'm just too scared of the risks that come with doing it. I'm 30, never had a girlfriend, only one date my whole life, never had sex without paying for it directly through escorts." That's one. Then another guy said, "I am in my 60s, been paying for sex since my 30s. At my age, women my age are not attractive and are a waste of time. By paying for it, I get attractive women. I and not have to deal with everything that goes with relationships. I have watched the decline of quality women for the last 30 years and add the risks of relationships. It is not worth it." And then another one that came up more recently said to me, "I'm sorry, sir, but intelligent men see through BS. Hence, paying for it has been the best option since the dawn of time. Hope is not a strategy. Modern women are different now. It's a new world now." Wow. That's where we are. And I think that's more common than you would like to believe. My response to it is, of course, people have the right to make certain choices, but my response to this in the video, my response to this in addressing Shannon in terms of the paying for sex and just that approach, I did a video on that too. My response has been, it's important for us to be willing to do the work to learn how to coexist with women. And I know a big part of this is men quitting because maybe they had 5 breakups, 13 exes, and they give up because they struggle to coexist with women. And part of that, not, and I don't say this as a joke, but that's a skill issue. So if you adjust and work on you in terms of your skill issue, then you can have, quote, normal relations without having to pay for sex. This can be addressed from a lot of different vantage points. I can't address them all today. But the one that I'm going to address today is simply go to therapy. I think a lot of men, if they actually went to therapy and were honest, they would figure out how much they contribute to their failed relationships, even going back to how they pick. I've talked to so many men who are stressed out about romance because they keep having negative situations with women. But when we go back, we realize that they chose that woman based off of physical characteristics initially, and then down the road, her bad character starts to come out. And her bad character is what ruins the relationship or pushes them away. That is not an issue with modern women. That is an issue with who you choose to deal with. And a lot of us don't want to take some responsibility and not be driven by the wrong head and say, you know what? I met you drunk at the club at 3 a.m. and I tried to make a relationship out of it and got mad that it didn't work out. And now I'm just paying for sex. That's a skill issue. That's a wisdom issue. That's a maturity issue. And many of us, again, if we went to therapy and worked through our own issues, how we contribute to our failed relationships, how we contribute to failed talking stages, maybe our projections or insecurities run women off, cheating, a lack of sexual discipline ruins relationships, or even unresolved mommy or daddy issues. There's so many things, or undiagnosed mental illness. There are so many things that contribute toward these failed relationships that we can actually fix personally, But many of us are taking the easy route out and just saying it's these women. Screw them. I'ma just pay for it. And I would say the premise is even wrong. If you were just getting in romantic relationships for access to sex and that was your only driver, that is a problem too. Uh, Romantic relationships and marriage aren't necessarily in place just for her to be a masturbatory toy for you. But many men won't say it that way, but that's the expectation. Let me pick one of these, commit, give her a ring, move in with her, do the things that she wants for me to get what I want. And a lot of times, all that some of us want is the sex. And I'm arguing that that's not the best starting point for a relationship to begin with. Uh, but simply paying for sex for the rest of your life has a series of risks and liabilities tied to it as well. If that's absolutely what you want to do with your life, I ain't gonna argue with you about it. But I'm here to say two things. There is a better way, and paying for sex at 56, 57, 58 years old, 59, 60 is not the good life. Um, yeah, that's what I have to say about that. All right, that's my Shannon Sharpe vantage points. Hopefully, it all makes sense now that I went at that from a few different angles. I'm gonna close out with some Kanye stuff. So I'm not gonna play this song. You can go look it up. Kanye West. It's called Cousin. Kanye West shared with us that he was performing oral sex on his cousin up until the age of 14. My understanding is the cousin is in prison, and Kanye was wondering or alluding to those confusing experiences playing a part in the bad trajectory of his cousin's life and him feeling a level of shame for that. I haven't listened to the whole song, I've just heard clips, but you can go listen to it. Uh, and then Kanye, after bringing this to the public's attention, he went on to post, "Since everyone thinks I'm gay now, can I say the word Faggot?" Um, and I don't know if that was a joke or serious. Is he feeling away because people aren't understanding if he was just sharing that, but he still sees himself as straight, or was he coming out? And I don't know if he was saying that to say that y'all calling me gay and I'm not, that's not how I see myself. This was just something that happened. And this brings up an interesting conversation that I can address from multiple vantage points. Vantage points too. One is this is actually very common for boys and girls. And again, going back to that stigma I addressed, more particular for boys, the conversation doesn't get discussed. Men typically don't share about sexual encounters they had at a very young age, like that, like 6, 7, 8, 9. Uh, but there are a lot of adult women that mess with little boys at that age. And there are also a lot of boys that end up having experiences with other boys at that age, too. And that I would say is not necessarily a marker of homosexual orientation. There are many, and this is again just, I'm speaking to you from a place of counseling, research, and so on, and personal experience as well in terms of the conversations with people who have lived through this. Um, Although many of us like to assume that people who say they're straight, particularly men, have only ever had some type of sexual contact with women, you'd probably be surprised how many people had, quote, homosexual encounters when they were children, whether it be an adult doing something to them or them simply experimenting with another child. Many children uh, get exposed to pornography or get curious about sexual contact or genitalia in particular and other people's genitalia, and they begin to experiment out of curiosity. And this doesn't necessarily tie to their sexuality. It's more so, I don't know about this, your parts, my parts. this is new. Let's figure it out. And sometimes it's as simple as this other person here has a body. Let me explore their body, whether it's a boy or a girl, a cousin or not. Um, so children end up experimenting with other children with no regard for labels as it relates to sexuality, family planning, or whether they're related to that person or not. Those things aren't necessarily going through a child's head. So these encounters happen actually frequently. And I would say, going back to that stigma as it relates to being tied to the gay, straight men or men that are being perceived as straight don't want to have that discussion. So a lot of men will take to the grave that they had an encounter like that with in their childhood with another child, or they'll take to the grave that an adult male has some type of sexual contact with them because they don't want that label. And it's not even necessarily due to being interested in that. I'm telling you that there are straight men who are romantically and sexually interested in women, want a family, and just happen to have those experiences, and it has no bearing or determination for the sexual orientation that they have. So this is why we need to be more nuanced in our conversations about sexuality and recognize that things aren't necessarily as black and white as we may have been taught, and your experiences don't necessarily denote your sexuality or orientation. It should more so be a conversation with the person and allow them to say to you whatever label they want to use. Um, because technically speaking, again, where I come from, where I know a lot of us come from too, amongst men, gay is something that gets put on you the minute you have any type of encounter with a man. It might even be if you see another man naked, or if a man sees you naked, or if you hug too long. We start putting that label on stuff that ain't even sexual. In fact, there are men that do certain things in the bedroom with women, but because there's stigma tied to you not supposed to have that certain part of your body stimulated, or you're not supposed to do this, uh, men have to even question what they do in the bedroom with women because they don't want to get labeled gay by her or for the information to get out. There are men that feel like their sexuality is in question if the woman is on top. So this stigma goes really deep, and it prevents us from even being able to have nuanced conversations about the type of sex we want to have in the bedroom with a woman, or even talking to friends, family members, or a therapist about a same sex encounter you had as a child. Uh, it seems to me that this experience did create some confusion within Kanye, but I'm here to assure you all that it is very possible to have these experiences, and that doesn't necessarily mean that that person is going to be homosexual or is even attracted to the same sex. Those things don't go hand in hand. And as I said to you before, you may be surprised how many straight people have had same sex encounters previously in childhood or even in teen years. So it's not as black and white as if you do this, you're gay. And again, it's a stigma because it doesn't happen in the reverse. When a person who's historically gay has one heterosexual encounter, they don't all of a sudden become straight, but we are jumping at the opportunity to make someone gay. And it all goes back to stigma and perceptions of masculinity. I addressed this a lot in my first book, Whole Brother, Debunking the Myths That Break the Black Family. So if you want to lean into some of this more and process through it yourself, you can do that. Available on hopewiththemission.com, but also Amazon. But also there's a podcast too if you don't want to spend no money. I discussed on a platform called the Jude 3 Project, I discussed that movie Moonlight, which was widely seen as the black gay movie, but they won an Oscar. And there were some themes there that I think if we're willing to actually have a nuanced conversation and not stigmatize the gay so much, we could learn a lot and treat people better. And that's the ultimate goal: is education and creating a more loving society where we treat everyone with respect and dignity. I think we can do that without leaning into the stigmatization and the slurs and the broad generalizations about communities. Uh, so it would be beneficial for us to take a step back and maybe have certain conversations. Maybe you need to ask your children about what took place in their childhood. Maybe you need to talk to a therapist about some of your experiences. Maybe you need to see how potentially you're overcompensating in this area to hide this area or to prove something to yourself. That exists. I didn't think I would get to this, but last thing I'll say on it is one of the ways that this can play out if someone had a childhood encounter like this is I see online a lot of times men get mad when some women talk about why is this guy so sexually active? Why does he deal with many women? Why does he always cheat? And some women have started putting together in their heads men that have that much sex, that are over sexualized, that are always promiscuous, always cheating, always dealing with women sexually, and then just a way that's just too much. Women have started putting together in their head and saying that that man is gay. And a lot of times men respond sarcastically saying, y'all tripping, how is me dealing with a whole bunch of women making me gay? Uh and while I get the black and white thinking in that sense, how you arrive at that conclusion, I'm here to say that there does exist an internal wrestling that a man may have about his own sexual desires that may go back to being touched as a child by a man, that may go back to experimental encounters with the same sex as a child or whatever else. And there do exist situations where a man is wrestling through those things internally, and in order to prove to himself or to suppress it more, he may just start having sex with a whole bunch of women to prove something to himself or others, as I was speaking about in the beginning of this episode. So that's a perfect full circle moment. Uh, a man that sleeps with a lot of women could like that, could be dealing with mental illness, manifesting as hypersexuality, could have a substance abuse issue, could have a personal insecurity and constantly needing that validation. And he also could be dealing with uh, struggling with his sexuality and having these encounters to kind of settle and prove to himself that he is straight or to push the gay away. All those things are actually possibilities that are common in different people's experiences. So don't write the women off so quickly when they bring that up. This has been another episode of Whole Brother Live. Thank you for joining me, and I'll see you next time.